What's up guys, Greg Bear here of Greg's Halfling Garden channel, and today I want to go over 5 topics I wish I knew more about before I started gardening. With that being said, roll the intro. Like I've said in past videos, I wasn't new to gardening when I started my garden at my house. I had been gardening probably 10 or 15 years before that as a kid. I remember in like the 3rd grade, I would come home every day on the school bus. I lived in a trailer park at the time, and I had a garden right in front of the trailer. It was only like a foot wide strip, and I used to throw cucumbers there all the time. And as a kid, when I would go up to my grandparents' campground on Seneca Lake and come back like a week later, I would love, first thing I would do, jump out of the car and go check the cucumbers as a kid and see how much they grew. That was probably one of my greatest memories as a kid, is gardening. And after that, probably growing potatoes for the first time and making mashed potatoes from potatoes I just picked out of the garden. That was probably like 4th or 5th grade. Just great memories from gardening as a kid. I lost track here a little bit. I've been rambling on here. So I just want to go over 5 topics I wish I knew a little bit more about before I started gardening on a serious level. One being watering, one being the sun, one being fertilizing, one being polycultures versus monocultures, and the last one being tilling. So I'm going to start them off from what I view as least important to most important. So we're going to start off with polycultures versus monocultures. Now, if you know what mono and poly mean, mono means one and poly means multiple. So what I mean by that is, in a garden, most people like to grow everything in the same area. I mean, I do that already, so I'm kind of contradicting everything I'm saying right now, but I have to do it for a specific reason because of spacing and everything. But when you grow only one crop in a certain area, you're prone to breed disease and pests that live on that crop specifically, and you're creating a very weak garden in the end. Because think about it like this: if you only took like vitamin A every day, didn't take any other vitamins, you would not be healthy. The same thing applies to your garden. When you only grow, say, corn or tomatoes or squash in one spot, you're basically training the soil to only have organisms that are compliant with squash, good and bad. So when a bad pest or a microorganism comes into your garden won't be prepared for that, because it only sustains the microorganisms that are good for that specific crop. So if you have a polyculture, it's like taking a packet of vitamins every day that has like 72 different vitamins in it. You're creating an ecosystem at that point. You're creating the circle of life. Sorry for the Lion King thing here, but you're going to create a super strong soil food web from the bottom to the top, with microorganisms to small insects to large insects to small invertebrates, large invertebrates, mammals, birds, and eventually getting to us. What you're basically going to do is create a super strong soil that has all the beneficial microbes in it. So when something on the outside comes in and tries to attack your soil or your plants, your soil already has a beneficial microbe that can fight it off a little easier. For a little bit of a better explanation on poly and monocultures, I would definitely check out one of 1 Yard Revolution's videos. He actually follows poly and monoculture to the T in his gardens, where I really don't, because of how everything's set up in my garden. But definitely check his channel out. He's been gardening on YouTube for, I'd say, at least 10 years now. I love that guy. I learned most of the stuff from him because we do have similar climates. He's in Chicago, I'm in upstate New York, so I think we're only like half a zone to a zone apart. So I definitely follow a lot of stuff he does, especially my light setup back here and composting, wood chips, and all that stuff. So that's 5. Let's go to 4 now. So 4 is going to be the sun. This is a short one. When I started gardening, I mean, everybody knows that plants need sunlight to grow, but when I started, I didn't actually know where north and south was on my property, so I just put it where I thought it would be pretty, not taking into consideration the path of the sun through the seasons. So my original garden is placed between my house and my garage, and it only sees less than 6 hours of sunlight a day. I am very successful still at growing squash and small tomatoes over there, but if I had placed that a little better, I could probably use that more to grow large tomatoes, pumpkins, watermelons and other things that need a little more sunlight. But instead I kind of just placed it over there as a rookie move. It was just this big open space, which I'll show you the picture right now. As you can see, it was just a big open space. I had like a clothesline over there and just grass, and it was just ugly, so I wanted to put my garden right there so it'd be nice and cozy and close to my front door so I could get out there whenever I wanted. Throw my hobbit door on there. It was great, but throughout the years, you know, the trees have grown in a little more and just doesn't see as much sunlight, so I don't rely on that garden a lot for production as I should. Number 3. Now this was a very hard list to make. I'd say the next 3 are probably almost all equal in importance. I put tilling at number 3. If you don't know anything about no-till, I've only been doing it for about 2 or 3 years, of course, because I learned a lot as I went. I always thought you had to till a garden because that's all I ever saw was people tilling their garden, so it just made sense, right? No, it doesn't make sense. If you look at things like flash floods, they could be easily controlled if there were less parking lots and compacted land around. I'll try to explain this a little without showing any visualizations, but basically, worms, they make all the tunnels underground, and then you get things like mycorrhizae, which are the fungal network that make up like mushrooms and stuff, and just insect pests in general, tiny little roots from grass, anything like that. They make up a huge network underground, and when you till that, you disturb that whole thing. You froth it up because you're thinking you're making the soil better, but you're actually making it more compact once it gets rained down, because the rain's going to beat it down, and then there's going to be no little micro tunnels and everything inside the ground. But if you left it as is, when the rain hits the soil that has a proper microbiological network underneath it and all the worm tunnels intact, the rain's just going to soak right in instead of running across. Perfect for a garden, because if you look at it, your rain's going to soak right in and get right down to the roots. But if you tilled it, the rain's just going to run off because it's going to create a crust on top once it rains, and especially with like a clay soil, you're going to create this ugly, nasty clay crust on top. The rain's just going to run off straight out of your garden, and your garden's not going to see half the water that it actually needs. So no-till is huge. Like I said, I'm probably not explaining this the best I can. Definitely check out 1 Yard Revolution again. He has great videos on no-till as well. Number 2, water. This is another one that most people would be like, oh, you have to water a garden, right? No, you really don't. If you follow no-till, like I've explained before, you leave all the microbiological network, mycelia and worm tunnels and all that stuff, the rain will come to your plants, so you don't have to work any harder for that. But when you don't do that and you till, of course, the rain's going to run right off. But also, here's something crazy to think about. Think about this. If you feed a stray cat every day, it's always going to come back. Think about this. If you water your tomatoes frequently, the roots are never going to go any deeper because they're trained and they know they're going to get water, so they don't have to try any harder. Try this next time you grow tomatoes. Don't water them at all. Yeah, I said that. Don't water them at all. The only time I water my tomatoes is when I first plant them, so they're successful and they can establish roots. After that, I don't water them at all, outside of rain, of course. Last season, I went the entire season without watering my tomato plants, if you can believe that. One, it's going to create a healthier plant because it's going to naturally want to dig deeper into the ground and spread its roots out. And to a point, especially in my soil, once it gets down to the native clay, it's going to uptake all of those rock minerals that are essential and create a super healthy plant. Because if you look at nutritional values of plants, say like arugula, it's supposed to have like 4 times the calcium as milk, but that's in a laboratory setting where it's gone under perfect soil. The arugula you probably get at the grocery store after it's been shipped 1,200 miles across the country and stored for 3 months probably has no nutritional value. But arugula grown at home and done right, not watered too much, but now I'd say you can't just not water everything. Sometimes things like greens, you're going to have to water them a little bit, but definitely you can probably cut it back to less than once a week. I mean, you just have to watch the plant. Just let it grow deep and get to the native soil underneath and uptake some of those nutrients. Now, this isn't a foolproof plan for no water. There are some tomatoes that are prone to cracking if you don't water them frequently. Like the cherry tomatoes I grew last year, the Sweet 100s, definitely cracked a little bit because I didn't water them, because what happens is they go for a while with no water, so the stem's not putting anything into the fruit because it needs to sustain itself, and once water hits, all the capillaries and everything flow up with water, and it wants to go and put water into the plant, but the skin on the outside isn't ready for that, and it starts to plump up, and then it just cracks the skin, and then you have a garbage tomato pretty much if you don't pick it that day. You have all the inside of the fruits that's actually exposed to insects, bacteria, and all that stuff, so you have to pretty much throw that away. So this isn't a foolproof plan, but if you find the right tomato or the right crop in general and follow a no-till and a no-water method, you are good to go. And it's also going to concentrate the flavor a lot more because you're not eating a watered down tomato, just a little bit more thing. This definitely works great with a saucing tomato. You'll have a tomato that has a lot less water content in it, so you can boil them and not spend 8 hours doing it. You can probably cut that down to 4 hours maybe, because it'll have half the water content in it and a lot more flavor, and the walls will still be thick with tomato paste. The number one thing I wish I knew more about was fertilizing. Everybody knows the company Miracle-Gro. They've established themselves in the gardening community since probably, I don't know what, the 50s, as something you absolutely need to have big plump tomatoes and big squash and huge corn, but you do not need that. For one, a lot of Miracle-Gro is actually made from municipal waste that they buy from sewage treatment plants that we pay to have our stuff shipped to so they can make a profit of and then resell it to us as Miracle-Gro. Just look up like Milorganite is one of the companies that make stuff off municipal waste as well. So I steer clear of both of those brands now. Now I'm gonna say I don't completely not use fertilizer. Like I've shown in the past, I do use it for my trees and my trees only because they are a huge investment. Most of my trees have cost up to $40 a piece, and I just want to do everything I can to make sure those survive. So I do give them a proper amount of fertilizer. Even though I have dressed compost underneath them before I planted them, I just want to make sure they survive because I have a deer problem, so the deer do defoliate my trees a lot, and my native soil isn't super healthy. So if I just use compost in my hole, what will tend to happen with trees is they will stay in the hole where the soil's good and just root bound around. But if you use fertilizer, the roots are more likely to go outside of the healthy compost zone and get into the native soil to get all the rock mineral uptake that's in the clay soil that I have. Now here's another crazy thing I'll try to explain. Basically, what fertilizing is like, it's like just drinking a cup of coffee in the morning. You're just faking your way through the day with fake energy. But instead, if you just woke up, ate a huge salad of like arugula, kale, radicchio, a bunch of healthy greens, took your vitamins, drank a lot of water, and exercise more, you'd be more healthier overall in the long run because you're creating a healthier body instead of an instant fix. It works the same for fertilizing. Quick release fertilizer is just like a quick fix. You're creating plants that will become dependent on the fertilizer. They won't try to expand their root structure to find nutrients themselves. They'll just become dependent on the fertilizer and become super weak in the process and be more prone to disease and pest at that point. What you do when you create a proper biological system, starting from the bottom up, is you're going to create a plant that will want to explore and get into the soil more. And this goes hand in hand with no-till and watering properly. You're going to create a plant that'll want to dig deeper. And of course, at that point, if you didn't till the soil, you're going to have a proper myofungal network in there. And what will happen then is the whole fungal network will actually transfer nutrients around from the soil and bring it straight to the roots because it has a symbiotic relationship to do that. And this gets crazy. If you look at a root tip close up, it's a big tip and it has like a kind of like a shield around it almost. It's called the rhizosphere. And that's where a cation exchange happens, where it exchanges positive and negative ions. And that's how the nutrients actually make it into the plant. It's super hard to explain. I've read a couple books on it, but I still don't completely get it. But for the most part, I do. So I try to follow that to the T. So that's where like a healthy compost comes in. I'm not saying till the compost in, but if you just top dress with compost, what you're going to do is create a barrier on top of your soil. You'll create a barrier that'll keep in moisture, keep the weeds down, have a place for beneficial bacteria and insects to go and pull down the compost into your soil as they eat it. And especially earthworms, I don't know the exact number on it, they eat tons of stuff every day. If you look at a square acre of land that has earthworms on it, they can, I think it's like at least 20 tons they can move in a day, which is insane. That's like a bulldozer working for a couple hours, which is insane to think about. So the only fertilizer I use outside of my trees is compost. And most people would be like, compost isn't a fertilizer. But it really is, if you think about it. Compost is a slow release fertilizer. What it does depends on the compost too. Take compost that's made mainly from leaves. What is in that compost is rock dust, because trees have the ability to dig super deep in the ground and their roots can technically crack open rocks, and as the rocks eroded underground, they're going to uptake all the rock minerals and bring them up into their trunk, and then eventually every year all those nutrients get released in the leaves. So if you have a compost that's dominated by leaves, you're going to top dress your soil with a supercharged amount of rock dust and minerals that will immediately supercharge your ground, because the beneficial bacteria and everything will start eating all of those rock dust and break them down even further, so they get right into the root zone and then up into your plants. Silica being one of them, that creates super healthy capillaries and a thicker stem on most of your plants. If you have a compost that's made mainly of woody products like wood chips, you're going to get a lot of beneficial mycelia, which is the mushroom fungal networks underground, which of course their whole thing is, it's like a highway of nutrients that go straight to plants. If you somehow were able to make a camera that could map out fungal networks underground, you'd be amazed. I know there's a grove of aspen trees somewhere in Colorado or something that's like miles and miles, like hundreds of square miles, because it's all connected with a mycelial network underground. It's amazing. Definitely look this stuff up after you get done watching this video, because I'm not doing it justice explaining it like this at all. And of course, there's a whole different subject on browns and greens and compost that we could go over probably in another video, because this video is probably going to be already too long right now. And that about does it. I went over 5 different topics I wish I knew a little bit more about before I started gardening seriously. I also want to go over a few books I've read in the past that will definitely help you on the way, especially learning about the topics I talked about. And most of these books can be found on eBay or Amazon for super cheap. Like, I got most of these books for under $3 besides the one which I'll show you. So first book, this may look like a kid's book, but it's got some great information on it. The Worm Book. It talks all about worms and what they do underground, how they eat our garbage and all that stuff. I got this for like $2. If anybody knows anything about the Rodale Institute, they've been a garden staple for years. They are super serious about debunking our need for GMOs, and they did like a 20-year study on GMO crops versus regularly grown crops and their production rates on them. Definitely a great book to read, all about composting, about browns and greens and thermophiles and different temperatures of compost and stuff. Another super cheap book as well. Another great compost book. I got a lot of composting books because I love to read about it. Just a simple book, goes over basics of composting. Not as super scientific as the Rodale book, definitely an easier read too. And this last book, this is a pricey one. It's almost 20 bucks, but it's the best book you ever want to read. If you want to learn about the soil, fungal, bacteria network underground and everything, it goes through it step by step, every single stage from like microbes to small, large, medium, extra large invertebrates and all that stuff that could be in your garden. Amazing book. Like I said, it's about, if you can find it, maybe 15 to 20 bucks with free shipping on Amazon and eBay. So just some great books to go over. I have like 50 books on gardening that I'll probably be talking about throughout my videos on this channel. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was kind of just a winging thing. I kind of just threw my camera on and started talking. It might not be perfect. I might not have all the information 100% correct, but I'm fairly sure on my systems how everything works. And like I said, check out One Yard Revolution's channel. He hasn't posted in like 3 or 4 months. He's been quite a busy guy, but he has some very informative videos, and he's been gardening for a lot longer than I have. If any of you guys are also in like the zone, I'd say 5 to 6 like we are, definitely check them out. Check my channel out. We definitely are here to help you. And with that being said, if you guys like this video, definitely give it a like. If you want to see more, definitely consider subscribing to the Greg's Halfling family. Become one of my halflings. And if you want to stay in the know for all my future uploads, make sure to turn on the notification bell and make sure it's set to notifications on always. And I hope to see you guys all next adventure. Greg Bear out.